Britain calls for protests against Russia and a new diplomatic spat over the bombing of Syria. The Foreign Secretary warns Russia risks becoming a pariah state and it's time for action.
I would certainly like to see demonstrations outside the Russian embassy.
Also tonight, meltdown. Samsung scraps its new phone after some catch fire.
Stabbed at school, a teenager whose death could have been avoided.
And Arise Sir Rod, the rock star, receives his knighthood from Prince William.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Britain and Russia traded blows today in an extraordinary diplomatic row over Syria. The Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson called for people to protest outside the Russian embassy over the bombing of civilians in Aleppo.
Other MPs accused Russia of carrying out war crimes and demanded action. In response, the Russian embassy asked what had Britain achieved in Syria. Here's our international affairs editor, Raghi Omar.
Yet again today, the dead and injured of eastern Aleppo were being pulled from the rubble after the latest bombardment of the city by Syria and Russia, which have killed hundreds in the past month. And the West, all the while, unable or unwilling to act. A situation that a specially convened parliamentary debate wanted to challenge, to call and press for a firm stance against Russia, with politicians of all sides calling for people to take to the streets outside the Russian embassy in London.
Where is the rage? Let's have 2 million, 3 million, 4 million outside the Russian embassy, day after day after day.
The Foreign Secretary joined in that call for protests against Russia.
But I would certainly like to see demonstrations outside the Russian embassy against what? Where is the Stop the War coalition at the moment? Where are they? If Russia continues in its current path, then I believe that great country is in danger of becoming a pariah nation.
Within a minute, the Russian embassy in London had responded to the Foreign Secretary's call with this tweet, saying Russia's record in Syria is thousands of villages freed from Islamist rebels, thousands of tons of humanitarian aid, and asking Britain, what have you achieved so far? The man who pushed for the debate, Andrew Mitchell, said people should be free to join such protests.
If people feel strongly, they should certainly demonstrate outside the Russian embassy. One of the things that today's debate showed was there's a feeling in the House of Commons that bullies should be confronted.
The Russian embassy responded, saying it's freed thousands of villages and given thousands of tons of humanitarian aid in Syria. What's Britain done?
Well, Britain has done more to support the people displaced within Syria who fled across the border into Jordan and Lebanon than the whole of the rest of the European Union put together. And they fled there because they'd been bombed and assaulted by the Russians and Russian-backed forces. So I don't think we need to take too much notice of that Russian comment.
This new diplomatic war of words worsens an already poisoned atmosphere. Whilst eastern Aleppo continues to lie in such ruins, it's hard to see what there is left of it to save.
Raghi, it was extraordinary language, wasn't it, from Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary? But is it a case of strong language but actually very little action, do you think?
Well, I think, language matters in diplomacy, and they've certainly hit home. Not only because the Russian embassy in London tweeted, within a minute of Boris Johnson's comments in the debate today, and they've continued tweeting. Just before we came on air, there was another tweet from the Russian embassy saying a very unusual call for the Foreign Secretary to hold demonstrations in front of the Russian embassy. A new form of British diplomacy, ? But, behind the debate, behind the angry words, which of course makes it much harder to find a diplomatic solution to the crisis in Syria, there is a sense of impotence by Britain, by the European nations and by America, because there's nothing else they can really do. A no-fly zone was explored. That was voted down by Russia at the Security Council. So words is all they can use at the moment.
Raghi Omar at Westminster, thank you.
Samsung, the world's biggest phone maker, is in crisis tonight after it was forced to stop production of its flagship new model. The disastrous launch of its exploding Galaxy Note 7 and its failure to solve the problem will cost it billions of pounds. But as our consumer editor Chris Choi reports, the damage to Samsung's reputation could cost it even more.
Images searing through the reputation of the world's biggest smartphone firm. First, the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 was recalled, then its replacement hit trouble, and today production was permanently halted.
I pulled the stylus out and
Experts that started as fans of this phone now believe damage to the brand will run deep.
You go into a store, a user says, I'd like a new phone please, I have a massive budget. They'll say, would you like a Samsung? They'll be like, you mean the one that blows up?
Samsung recalled 2.5 million Galaxy Note 7 smartphones worldwide last month, 45,000 of those in Europe, mostly in the UK. Around £1.25 billion has already been lost in recall costs alone, and today the company's share price fell by around 8%, wiping almost £15 billion off the market value of Samsung in a day. Shares slumped as investors saw a massive setback for Samsung in its epic rivalry with the Apple iPhone.
In terms of manufacturing, they've had a bit of a problem here, and the only people who will be smiling like Cheshire Cats will be, of course, the shareholders of Apple.
For Samsung, this calamity isn't just about technology, it's also about timing. Just as the firm should be gearing up for the Christmas market, it's telling customers to switch off these phones.
Introducing the all-new Samsung Galaxy Note 7.
Its marketing promised to ignite creativity.
So you can keep feeding the flames of your sparks of genius.
These are the only flames and sparks that will be remembered from a phone with a long-lasting battery, but a short life itself. Chris Choi, ITV News.
Yeah, there were calls today for teachers in Scotland to be given more powers to search pupils for knives. It follows the fatal stabbing of 16-year-old Bailey Gwynn at a secondary school in Aberdeen last year. An independent review into Bailey's death found it could have been prevented. Here's our Scotland correspondent, Peter Smith.
Bailey Gwynn was in school when he was stabbed, killed by a single knife wound. He was just 16 years old. His killer, identified only as Child A, was known to carry weapons to school. He'd shown his knife and knuckle dusters to close friends before. An independent review was ordered to look into this killing, and today the findings were delivered.
This was potentially predictable and avoidable if those who knew that Child A carried weapons in school had reported this to staff.
A number of recommendations have been made in the Bailey Gwynn report, principally that the Scottish Government should give teachers more powers for weapon searches, including the right of a head teacher to search pupils without their consent if there is a specific threat. It also said the local council and police should create a new policy to manage the weapons getting into schools. It concluded that Bailey might still be alive today if those who knew the killer often carried a knife had reported it to a teacher. But the head teacher at Bailey's old school insists there was nothing she or any of her staff could have done.
We can only deal with what we do know and what is brought to us. The boy concerned did not give us any reason to worry. He was not in trouble. He was never in any bother in school.
It's been almost 1 year now since Bailey Gwynn was killed here. These recommendations today will be of little comfort to his parents now. They can only hope that this has not been another toothless exercise, that real lessons are being learned from their son's death, and that changes will be made to ensure our schools are as safe as they possibly can be. Peter Smith, ITV News, Aberdeen.
The FTSE index of 100 leading companies hit an all-time high today, partly because of the continued fall in the pound. Sterling now stands at just over $1.22, a fall of nearly 5% in 8 days. It's the lowest level for the pound in 30 years. Our business editor, Joel Hills, is in central London. And Joel, what does all this tell us about the state of the economy?
Well, Mark, it's tempting to see what's happening on the stock market as a barometer for British health, economic health. It's not. Look at the companies more closely. You'll see the likes of HSBC, BP, Burberry. They're listed in London, but they're global in reach and they do a lot of their business abroad in foreign currencies. So the weak pound for them is a bit of a windfall. For us as a nation, the picture is less rosy. Great news, of course, for British exporters, but as a nation, we consume mostly imports. So we are exposed and vulnerable to a sustained devaluation in the pound, and if it stays at this level, what we'll see in the months to come is prices starting to tick up. You've probably seen it filling up the car. You've almost certainly seen it. If you bought a car, you'll feel it more widely in the months to come, and this matters because the economic resilience we've seen since the referendum has been built on the fact that consumers have kept on spending. It looks, all things being equal, as if we're about to experience a squeeze in living standards here.
All right, Joel, thank you very much indeed.
Fujitsu has announced it's axing 1,800 jobs in the UK. The Japanese multinational has told workers it wants to streamline operations to remain competitive. It insists that the announcement is not linked to Britain's vote to leave the EU.
Long-suffering Southern Rail passengers are pleading for an end to the travel chaos after they were hit by another strike.
Yes, some endured hours of delays after the start of the three-day walkout, combined with overrunning rail maintenance. And as Rebecca Barry reports, there's still no sign of an end to the dispute.
This train will be advertised shortly.
The worst possible start to the day. Here at Brighton Station, commuters were left stranded for hours. Today's strike by rail workers made even worse by overrunning engineering work.
Nobody seems to care about us workers or the people we work for.
Oh, shocking, absolutely shocking.
Those lucky enough to get on board a Southern train had to be even luckier to get a seat.
You never see your family.
London Victoria.
You know that a normally long day will be even longer. It's a nightmare.
This long-running dispute is about the role of guards. The walkout by the RMT union going ahead, even though it advised members to sign the new contract.
Really, why are they choosing to heap more misery on passengers? And I can only apologise to our passengers for that.
But the RMT insists this is a necessary fight to maintain safety.
Obviously, during our strike days, it is our intention to cause as much disruption as possible. We have a point to make, and it would be futile and silly of me to deny that that was our objective.
Tonight, Southern Railway has offered to hold fresh talks. But if they fail, passengers face at least another 2 days of disruption. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Still to come here on the ITV Evening News, the maternity unit that could ask pregnant women for ID before treating them.
And unmasked, the first person in Britain to be fined for being a scary clown. Those stories and more right after the break. Welcome back. A hospital trust wants to start asking pregnant women to show photo ID to prove they're eligible for NHS maternity care. St George's in South London says so-called health tourists saw it as a soft touch and it's costing millions of pounds. Our political correspondent Libby Vina is here. It all sounds rather controversial to me.
It does sound controversial, but all hospitals are under pressure from the government to try and charge people who are not meant to be given free treatment on the NHS, that is, people who are not ordinarily resident in the United Kingdom. Now, this hospital in South London, St George's, has identified a particular problem with its maternity unit. It says that people are specifically coming to that part of London to have their babies. And it's decided that there should be a blanket requirement for all mothers who sign up to have their babies at St George's to show that they are resident in the United Kingdom. That is, to show a British passport or perhaps a foreign passport which shows that they have the right visa, that they are resident. Now, how big a problem is it? Well, nationally, the latest figures suggest that there are 50,000 births to women who are either visitors or temporary migrants in this country. That costs the NHS about £180 million a year. That's 7% of the maternity budget for the NHS, quite a significant figure. Now, the Royal College of Midwives does accept the need for hospitals to crack down on maternity tourism, as it's been dubbed, but they are concerned that their members will be put under pressure to actually look at the nationality and residency of their patients, and they don't want that to happen. We'll hear now from the Chief Executive of the Royal College of Midwives.
We're worried that midwives themselves will become the gatekeepers to services. This is inappropriate. Health professionals are not border guards, they're caregivers. And I don't believe it's right that any midwife should be in the position of seeing a woman who's pregnant and not being able to give her care.
I think we all know that the NHS is under considerable financial pressure at the moment, and St George's in South London is in the red to the tune of £46 million. I think the bosses there have decided that they need to go after every penny they can.
All right, Libby, interesting to see where this goes. Thanks very much.
An 18-year-old man has become the first person in the UK to be fined and given a criminal record over the growing clown craze. Connor Jones was arrested for intimidating children outside a comprehensive school in Caerphilly. It comes as genuine clowns complain their business is being seriously harmed. Richard Pallow has more.
If the craze began as a joke, it has now become criminal. This the mask and outfit that a teenager used to scare secondary school students in South Wales. And now the 18-year-old behind it, Connor Jones, has been fined for a public order offence due to the distress caused. In West London, a student at Brunel University has been arrested after brandishing a real chainsaw on campus at night. He claims it was just a prank. And heavily armed police were even stationed at 2 Northern Irish schools after warnings online that clowns carrying knives would be waiting for pupils.
They were certainly very, very upset, and obviously that disrupts class in the afternoon. They were just genuinely worried for their own safety. Were they going to get home safely? There's these rumours of these clowns with these knives and what have you.
Bibbledy Bob, a professional clown, was this afternoon getting ready for his latest performance. But like many employed in this centuries-old art, he believes the publicity is proving damaging.
I am angry, and it is not a silly prank. If people are laughing, it's a prank. If people want to be involved on it with their mates, that's a prank. But if you're doing it to completely innocent members of the public, my fear is that it'll go wrong. And my fear is that someone in the public will get really scared.
This all began in the US, but now police forces across the UK are warning the public not to get involved due to the consequences it has on others, and it may end up having on yourself.
Oh my God, I don't like it.
Richard Pallow, ITV News.
And finally tonight, to a guy who really does have all the luck. Rock star Rod Stewart was knighted today for his long music career and his charity work.
Yes, watched by his wife Penny Lancaster and 2 of his 8 children. He joked with Prince William that he has to keep performing to pay for them all. He told Sally Lockwood what the honour means.
Handbags and glad rags at the palace with wife Penny. It can only mean one thing for rock royalty Rod Stewart.
Sir Roderick Stewart for services to music and to charity.
A knighthood for the North London lad who started life working in the family newsagent before becoming one of the best-known artists of all time.
Congratulations, Sir Rod Stewart. How does that feel?
It feels wonderful. It really, really does. It's mind-blowing.
And how did it go in there? What did Prince William have to say?
He asked me if I was, going to continue touring, and I said yes, because I've got 8 children. I haven't got much option.
Sir Rod's career has spanned 6 decades, selling more than 100 million records worldwide. At 71 years old, he's still performing his much-loved hits.
Love is like a burning arrow. It can pierce the coldest heart.
A unique talent to pass on to 8 children. Even at 5, his youngest knows how to strike a good pose.
What's been your proudest moment, would you say?
Oh, my proudest moment? Well, this one, and this one, and many others.
What are you going to do with that now? What does one do with that?
I'm going to put it on.
He's going to wear it every day for breakfast.
Because it goes.
And as his 70s hit goes, Sir Rod, you wear it well. Sally Lockwood, ITV News.
I think the mullet should have got one all of its own as well. A gong for the mullet. That's it for now. Tom, who doesn't have one, will be here with news at 10.
But from all the team, have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.